Hey everyone, welcome back to A to Z, where we decode the biggest shifts in finance, tech, and work, and everything in between. I'm Aman, and I'm flying solo today because Zubin is off on a well-earned vacation. While he's recharging, I thought, why not turn this into a special edition and uh, and bring in two besties of the show for a conversation that's more personal, more reflective, and 100% relevant to the times that we're living in. We're talking about how to manage people and careers in the age of AI, not just survive, but thrive. And to unpack that all, I'm joined first by Sunil Settler. He's a CHRO at AI scale up MindTickle. Sunil's worn many hats across big tech, including Amazon and Google, where we first met. And he's helped most recently, before this, Gojek go from hypergrowth to IPO as their CHRO. He's a systems thinker, a people first leader, and one of the clearest voices on how to build cultures that scale. Welcome, Sunil. Next up is Roger, an executive coach, leadership whisperer. In fact, he's whispering leadership nothings to people in London, where he's coming live from today. And actually, Roger's a living example that Kiwis are really nice people. Roger and I met 15 years ago when he tried to recruit me for a role at Apple. I didn't get the job, but his prep work blew me away. I literally told him, you should be a coach. And then he replied very soon after that was actually one of his last recruitment gigs, and he was becoming a coach. So Sunil, Roger, welcome to A to Z.
Great to be here. Thanks.
So let's start off with some light questions about managing your careers in the age of AI. Sunil, let's start individually, and then we'll bring Roger in as well. Everyone from interns to CEOs is asking, how do I stay relevant in the age of AI? What should I learn? What do I double down on? And what do I let go?
It's a great question. I recently saw an interview with Vinod Khosla where he said it best. He said the skill that we're all going to have to learn professionally and coming up through university is how to learn. So relearning, unlearning, relearning, that whole process is going to be important, and we're already seeing that. Traditional styles of career models don't work anymore. So you spent the last decade or so where people had T-shaped careers, where they would have clean domain experience in one deep domain area. They'd get to a senior enough level, and then they'd cut across multiple functions. That goes away. Those T-shapes are going to start looking like ladders, because you're going to hit that need to cut across domain areas and cross-functional areas much earlier in your career, which means you need to build a much broader perspective earlier on. But what AI does really well is it takes tasks and sort of makes them go away, or accelerates the rate at which tasks get done, which means where it would take you a month or 2 months or 3 months to grind through a set of options, to analyze things, to figure out the universe, now you can do that in maybe a day or 2 days. So the bigger muscle to exercise is questioning your own assumptions, knowing what you want really well, so having taste, having judgment, understanding what quality could look like at every level. So as you can imagine, that puts people who have experience at a bit of an advantage compared to people who are just starting off. So because you already know what good looks like, you already have discernment at some level. So you can look at a spit out of a bunch of AI options and say, okay, this works, that doesn't, and lead with that. But cultivating that intuition is a continuous process. And I think that repository of knowledge and expertise that everyone's sitting on at the moment is going to become redundant very quickly, which means you have to get used to being a learner and starting over from zero very often and frequently. So I'd say that's maybe the skill that's needed. There's a lot of talk about learning the tools and learning the techniques, but I think those things will evolve. I mean, there's a new tool and there's a new AI technique or a new AI model every week. I mean, I can't keep up with it, and a lot of AI researchers can't keep up with it. But what's important is picking up a set of mental models that you can apply to situations at work and or wherever you want to be productive.
Roger, you're coaching senior leaders through transitions. What are they struggling with most?
Yeah, I think if we look at it, what's happening is all companies are sort of questioning why they exist. And then you come down to their teams, and then you come down to the individual. So this is this lovely knock-on effect. And I think Sunil's, you've got it right. And this wisdom piece of knowledge is the key. I sort of feel that they need to ask yourself, sort of like, as an individual, what is that meaningful work you wake up to do in the morning? And then as a team, what is that meaningful work that you want to be known for? And then that will expand out to the company. So then the question is sort of, and you've heard me talk about this before, this humble world sort of domination. And this means it doesn't mean you're going to go out and conquer the whole world. It means you take a thin slice of the world and you say, that's where I want to compete. And the thing here is about making it personal, because you are going to have to relearn again and again. AI is blowing the doors off a lot of it. It's leveling the playing field in terms of knowledge. It's like you've got McKinsey in your pocket. Not quite.
Yeah. Some people are saying you don't need McKinsey no more.
Yeah. I feel you still need your McKinseys and your BCGs, because the relationship and that wisdom piece, knowledge is not an insight, but we're all going to have access to this knowledge. So that's where it's about making it personal. I think the challenge for the senior leaders is there's a feeling that as an organization, they're living in the basement, the AI basement. And it's like, how do we lift not just ourselves, but we lift everyone to the first floor and the third floor in the organization and do it together? Of course, there'll be a few people in the organization already on the sort of the 99th floor. Yeah. But I think overall, there is this fear around AI. And it's about how to sort of make safe environments for people to experiment and walk through that fear.
We'll try and avoid buzzwords in this, but there's a big buzzword going around called human in the loop. It gets thrown around a lot, Sunil. What does it actually mean? Is it the difference between the banisters or the staircase and the elevator, or to use Roger's analogy, is it something more profound?
I think it boils down to accountability. Hold an AI model accountable for decisions it's made or suggestions it's made. So at the end, you can throw up options, but there's still a human actor that needs to choose the option that's going to get deployed or the decision that's going to get taken. And it boils down to accountability. It boils down to explainability. And I think that is going to be important. I think you're always going to need a human in the loop. I'll give you an example, a recent example. With somebody I was chatting with in marketing. They used to grind through a week per marketing campaign for a client. Now they do it in half a day, and they have 5 or 6 options. But guess what? That didn't make their job go away. It made them more valuable, because now the client's confused. Now they have 6 options in the span of a day, and they're going to have to rely on their expertise and experience to figure out which one is going to work. So you get a stack rank set of options. So I think that's a very classic example of human in the loop. Even things like finance decisions, you can get recommendations for where to spend your money, but someone has to finally say, yes, that's where I'll spend my money.
Tell you something, Sunil, when I'm looking forward to being out of the loop is on all the chores that I'm being given by my family, by my kids and by my wife. I'm really looking forward to using agentic AI to do all the tasks that they, the bookings of tennis courts and, and all of that stuff. So as a dad, sometimes you want to
You're going to have to choose which tennis court is near your place.
This is where I'm hoping, we get to ASI, whatever it is, with agentic. Roger, when clients ask, where do I still add value? You're in London helping a group of people figure that out with AI right now. What's your response to them? Where do leaders add value?
Yeah, nice. Before I jump there, I'll share a new acronym with you, because I love acronyms. So there's phobia. So there's fear of being included.
Phobia. That's a new one. You heard it here first.
Yeah. So we have FOMO, and then there's, I think JOMO is becoming popular. Joy of missing out.
Joy of missing out, yeah.
And now this phobia is fear of being included and things you don't want to be dragged into. Now let's come back to the question. I think if there are no silver bullets when it comes to AI, right? There is no magic one-shot pipeline that, you put in a query and outcomes are happening. So I think a lot of the work we do is around helping people slow down to go fast, really look at the problem statements, break them apart into a chain, and then think about where AI has an advantage. And that is usually at the moment, it's around taking data and finding patterns.
Yep.
And then it can also help a little bit on taking patterns to insight, but that's really where you need a human discernment.
Hmm.
And I like to use the phrase sensibilities. Just because AI can doesn't mean you should. So there are a few examples, and we work across media, tech, and financial services. So on the media side, advertising agencies now can spin out real-time ads, but you have to be very careful here, because what does it do to a brand? If you're throwing out these cheap AI ads, you can actually reduce brand value, even though you may have some cost savings. So we have to be very careful there about what is the perception of AI as well.
You're really right. I saw the other day, I saw an ad. I forget, I'm not going to name the airline, but it was a Middle Eastern airline that thought you could see that it was their AI team trying to show off. And it was almost perfect, except that the voice was glitchy from the whole video. And it just like fell flat on its face, because it was like you're going to, you could tell that there's the digital team feeling like, oh my God, we're super smart. And then the customer saying, God, that was fake. But look, speaking of individuals, let's move to teams in the age of AI. And a lot of companies are deploying AI for productivity, Sunil. Dashboards, meetings, summaries, nudges, you name it. But implementation is not the same as impact, as you know, better than anyone else. What are you seeing? What's working? What's not working these days?
I think to quote Mao, the thousand lotuses are still blooming. So I think there's a lot of experimentation out there to figure out what works in what context. And I think the big issue with AI is it's very hyper specialized. It's very good at very specific things, very specific tasks. So, but work, as you know, is a collection of very specific tasks coming together. So you could perfectly execute every task, but they might not come together with the right outcome that you're looking for. So I think the jury's still out there, but I am concerned about organizations effectively, I think, mandating AI use. I've heard a couple of investment banks have basically said everyone must use X hours of AI, or X use cases of AI must exist in the work. And I think that's concerning. I think there's a little bit of the bent towards the panopticon. So there's surveillance of employees that's become easier with AI. There's also, I think, some learned helplessness that's crept in with teams. So there's people just looking at AI spitouts and they're going, "Yep, this is good enough," and sending it out. So comms, the quality of everything kind of degrades to the average, and the average is pretty bad. So I think those are things I'm seeing. So I think we're still figuring it out as a collective, like what that looks like. But I think we're going to keep seeing more and more promises of productivity. But I don't think it's going to be efficiency, not productivity. You're going to get there really fast, but it might not, it might not solve your problem.
Talking to Roger on this, he's a big fan of going slow to go fast. But I heard this really great quote, again, Mao quote, I'm told, which is that you can't smell the roses when you're galloping on your horse, or something like that.
I love that. That's awesome.
It sounds like Sunil's advocating for sort of getting off your horse and smelling the roses once in a while. But Roger, I wanted to challenge, is there a challenge to the traditional archetype of leadership in this new world? Are the best leaders going to be the ones who are, if you'd like, the organizers of complexity?
Yeah. So I think we're seeing this shift away from that hero archetype,
Yeah.
where you have to sort of jump in and know everything. And I think these days it's not possible, to being much more orchestrating across teams. I think there is a misconception that this is a 90% tech problem. I would argue this is a 90% people challenge.
Yeah.
And tech is actually a relatively small part of it. And it's about how can you get everyone moving quickly together. That's the sort of like taking people from the basement to level 1, level 3. And when you have that bulk of people moving together, that's when you can drive execution. So we like to talk about execution being divine. AI is really going to help with strategy. It's going to enable you to come up with lots of ideas and start to spin the wheels. But are you spinning them in the right direction? And here is where that human wisdom comes in. And the other thing we love is sort of context is king. Without that context, there's a tendency for AI to drag you down a rabbit hole. And then we always have this one with clients is sort of the AI told me so. So there's this sort of a blame game going on, and we all make this mistake. We've all been there. And if you're not holding the awareness, you'll fall into that trap.
I think that's what Sunil was referring to a little bit earlier, right? And it's very relevant. Building on Sunil, building on what you said, success in the age of AI. Yes, it's about doing more with less. It's about driving outcomes and execution. But you and I have talked about this. There's an intangible around this, around tastemakers, right? Like AI is great at pattern recognition, but in terms of original taste, if you're going to be the next Pharrell Williams, you're probably not going to come out of AI. But how do you operationalize this balance inside a company between sort of the efficiency of AI, avoiding the sort of the pitfalls, and then cultivating tastemakers who differentiate you?
That's a very good question. I don't know how to make
Thank you.
tastemakers. I think you're kind of born with it.
Come on, I was hoping to get the answer here.
But I think analogous group of people who do this for a living are product managers, especially tech product managers. They have to work on very quick iterative loops where they generate some hypotheses, put it out in the real world, get some feedback, respond to the feedback, keep iterating till it reaches some level of value or salience. And I think that mindset's going to need to be more universal in organizations. That whole era of this is the playbook, these are the exact steps, these 5 variables are never going to change, like just navigate within that. I think that's gone. I think all of us need to become product managers of our areas of expertise, irrespective of what level in the organization we're at. And the most successful people in companies today are people who think like that, who start from a place that they don't have the best idea, have an idea, they don't know if it's going to add value, and they want to test in the real world if it's going to add value. And AI then becomes this very happy companion that allows them to shape that idea, test that idea, generate feedback. So I think quick feedback loops, I think enabling teams and team members to operate that way, it requires a lot of risk, right? You're basically saying, okay, none of us know what we're doing, go do it. So I think that's going to be important. And I think an emphasis on inputs versus outputs. I think all of us get trapped in output-based thinking, and inputs become very important. So if you nail the inputs just right, the output will take care of itself. And I think that almost religious belief is going to need to become important. So that's where I think we're headed. As far as taste making is concerned, I think I'm of the school that it's a little bit of exposure therapy. The more of a thing you're exposed to, the more discernment you develop in that space. So like I was a one-time aspiring writer, and the more I read other great writers, the more terrible my work looked. Enough that I abandoned my quest. So yeah, I think more discernment, like Roger mentioned earlier.
Roger, anything to add or any words of encouragement for Sunil on his writing career?
Yeah, keep writing. We all have that Dunning. What do you call it? The Dunning-Kruger effect. We like to compare ourselves to the best in the world. If it's swimming, it's Michael Phelps, and we slam ourselves. And that's a big challenge because in the work environment, we've got to make safe areas where people can actually go and learn. Hold the intention, not the outcome. I guess that's the environment I would like to see grow more. We are very blind on outcomes and risk averse. So they're saying take risks, but if you don't hit your outcome, then you're slammed. So we need to make portions of the environment safe. And that's the key thing for people to sort of trip up and make experiments happen.
One of my biggest epiphanies working at Google was this engineering mindset that you don't need to know the answer. Actually, you're chasing the question. The best people I've worked in my banking career, which has been the main part, have been the ones who've chased the question rather than try to sort of provide the answer. And when I was at Google, back when I was when Sunil and I were there was so many people chasing that question. And I think, we are all parents here. When I think about my own children and preparing them for the age of AI, when I was growing up, Sunil and I went to the Indian education system where you were supposed to know the answer sort of within, a nanosecond of being asked it and the verbatim. But today, you need to ask the right question because the answer is, available in a nanosecond thanks to your
Correct.
favorite
That's it.
LLM. But like, let's speaking of large companies, let's talk about the great AI talent war. It's been like a hiring frenzy, Sunil, at Apple. Gosh, I bet, Roger, you wish you were still hiring for Apple. Your recruiting fee on the $200 million recruitment could be pretty nice. OpenAI snatching people, defending people. Feels like the transfer season of the EPL. Is this strategic or just like well-funded FOMO?
I think it's an old Valley playbook. I think about 8 or 9 years ago, they did the same thing for computer science skills. Most of the big tech companies emptied out PhD programs, master's programs very early.
Yeah.
And then obviously the round robin of hiring from each other, poaching from each other. I think that same playbook's at work here, right? What's mind-boggling, maybe it shouldn't be, is the size of those paychecks and those offers that are going out. But knowing tech, you always get a percentage of, you get a very small percentage of the value you potentially bring to the table, which simply, I mean, I look at all these in astronomical offers, and I'm like, that's probably 0.001% of the value that person's IP or effort is going to bring to the table. So $1 million or $2 million is probably chump change in the long game. But yeah, it's the same playbook playing out again, which is you hoard up on talent for either reasons of utility, where you actually have use for that talent, or to remove access of that talent from the market so nobody else can get ahead using their brain power. And then if you have to spend like $20 million, $30 million to keep some brain power off the market, so be it. It's a, that's money in your pocket in a very quick amount of time. So it's a brutal finite game way of thinking about it. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think that's where that's coming from.
That's brilliant. I remember I was just seeing a interview with Sergey Brin the other day, and he hasn't finished his PhD yet. So he was talking about that. And when we were at Google, there were so many people who were, from Stanford who hadn't finished their PhDs and ended up at Google and were there for 20 years. But that's a really, really great point. Though I don't think they were paid $200 million to drop out of Google. Roger, what's the cost to culture if everybody's chasing unicorns?
Yeah. So let's think about this. So I see it more like a barbell. So on the right-hand side, I would put sort of this global talent who are, the war on talent, they are winning. Basically, they can command their price.
Yeah.
Companies are going through existential crisis and they want to be relevant in 3 to 5 years' time, and they think this is their only bet. These are the breakthrough type people. That pool is really small, and there'd be a lot of competition there. The numbers we are seeing look ridiculous, but maybe we're not thinking about the market caps that have changed a lot. We've now got $1 trillion companies, and I think Apple took 3 trillion or something like that. But in the near future, we may see companies that are 5 or even higher, $10 trillion, right? And if you want a slice of that, this side of the barbell is what you've got to pay. It's the entrance fee. Now, unfortunately, the other side of the barbell, it's not so much. They're losing the war on talent, and people will be squeezed, right? And it's about how to keep them relevant. I think the future I don't want to see is maybe 4 or 5 companies dominating globally, right? I would not like to see that picture. I would like to see it a little bit more level playing field, and I think that's where we need a little bit of government support. So I think we will see a temporary bump in hiring around AI. And then when things stabilize, where they've worked out their data sets and they're getting their process flows and things working, then you'll see this shift from fiefdoms down to squads. Now, I call this the AI step. So when you're going through this process, it's very painful, and you will lose a lot of trust in the organization. The question in everyone's mind will be, why should I build this thing that's ultimately going to take me out of a job? So there'll be a lot of fear. And that trust sort of starts with an alignment problem. So my personal vision and the organization vision falls out of alignment. And then because of the trust, it's this horrible game of sort of ring a roses, we all fall down. If the company can't rebuild that trust, it will start to stall. And you can't really afford to sort of do mass firings and bring in new teams because they're so hard to build.
Yeah.
So I would say the two things there is making sure that you have really good alignment, and that alignment has to happen again and again. And then trust is going to really save the day for these companies to get traction.
Brilliant. Sunil, when we were talking about human in the loop, one thing that I didn't cover with you, I'd love to go a little bit deeper on is the division of labor between what do people do and what does AI do? What's like the framework you would use or advise, and MindTickle or other companies that, consult with you? What's the framework to figure out how you do that division of labor?
I think for where the technology is at, it's think about your organization as workflows, as value flows, and then see within those workflows which tasks, break them down into tasks, and then which tasks are best done by humans and which tasks are best done by AI. You'll find very quickly that anything which is a synthesis of information, gathering context, highly repeatable actions, those lend themselves naturally to AI and agentic workflows. Anything which is discernment, judgment, using context and then applying that is naturally going to be people. The question is, you're going to have a hybrid team. Like I've been talking about it for about, I think, 5 or 6 months, which is how do you manage in the context of a hybrid team? A hybrid team is not in office, out of office. It's you have an agent and you have people, and you're the head of this department. So you probably have 5 people and 50 agents. How are you going to resolve conflicts? How are you going to resolve the resource allocation? How are you going to resolve ways of working? And I think one thing that most people don't pay enough attention to is how explicit your culture needs to be for agents to be successful in your culture. Because AI can only learn on things that are written down in very explicit terms with very clearly defined boundaries. Otherwise, it can't figure it out. So if you and I are in office, Aman, and I have a question, I turn around and ask you, and you say, do this. And I turn around and I do it. The AI that's observing my work doesn't know why I took that action or why I took that leap. So I think setting context and creating a culture of very, high on explicit understanding, high on like writing things very clearly. Amazon, I think by its culture, would have a great head start just culturally. And I think remote first companies will have a great head start because you have to write everything down in a remote first company. You have to send an email or send a Slack message to get anything done. Or you have to be in a meeting, which can be recorded, observed, and transcribed to get anything done. So remote first companies are actually going to be great at AI.
Yeah. I just had an epiphany. Every manager, old school manager, who's like banging on the table saying, get back into the office, return to work, I want to see you at your desk. Actually, agents are the perfect employee. I'm not just at my desk. I'm always in the office. I'm always working. I'm always listening and doing exactly what you told me to do. So actually, if I screw up, it's because of you and it's not because of me. And this goes back to that original point. I'm not sure whether Roger said it or you did. It's like, what are the inputs? What are the questions that you're asking? What are the systems that you're building, rather than sort of say, I don't know what good looks like, but I'll know when I get there. That doesn't work for an agent. Roger?
No.
Sorry, Sunil?
No, sorry. I was saying the era of the command and control manager is definitely going to be tested because you have absolute command and absolute control. So work is entirely your fault or your success. Yeah.
Roger, you've been calling this for like, the last, God knows, 10, 15 years we've known each other. Your time has come.
Yeah, it was really good. But you just made me think of when I started my career, I was doing consulting work with companies. It was a factory and we had a computer there on the factory floor. It cost a small fortune in those days. And it wasn't working. And we were wondering why it wasn't working until we observed that every time a worker went past it, they would slap the side of the computer. And they just didn't want this technology on the factory floor. And it's how we quickly overcame that. You've got to show them the benefits, and this is not going to take your job. It's going to make your job better. And I think we just got to go through that again. That was back in 95. So now it's 2025.
Slap the computer. I love it. Was this in New Zealand?
This was in New Zealand. It was a pretty big manufacturing floor, and the workers would just come by and give it a good whack until it broke.
Roger, you're dropping pearls of wisdom here, from phobia to slap the computer.
Yeah, slap the computer. So we're going through the cycle. It's nothing new. And I think the message for people is, let go. AI will take 30 to 40% of your job over the next 3 to 4 years, and embrace that and think about how you can augment with AI to remain relevant. So as an individual, you want to progress, you want to be relevant to the market. We all want to pay our mortgages and have the right family experience. So you got to keep your competitive edge. And the more you sort of sit on the fence, that's a very dangerous game. I'd say people who sit on the fence will get shot. And then as a team, there is a massive productivity gain. So if we have two teams competing, then I want to be on that team that's leveraging AI agents. I like what Sunil was talking about. I can imagine a time when we start in a new company and be like, welcome to the company, Aman. Here are your 5 agents to support you. It's your little squad. And depending on your seniority, maybe you get access to different capabilities. There will be a cost attached to these agents.
Yes.
And then you will go off, and then we'll measure your performance as a squad. It's human plus the AI around you. What is the performance you're delivering?
Me, that's super exciting, but I can imagine it's like freaking out a lot of people. I'm like, give me my agents.
Yeah, and it's you're gonna, and then you'll be arguing like his agents are better than my agents. I want to
exactly.
all this sort of stuff. Well,
Can I name my agent?
So it's a new playing field, but I think getting people to feel familiar, and like when we run workshops, we want people to get confident. AI is just a tool. It's like Excel. Once you become confident with it, then you can start to embrace it and see it.
Super. Sunil, we are moving to a fun section, but I wanted to give you were nodding your head. Did you have anything to add to that before we move to our last section?
No, I was so much in agreement with Roger. It's exactly all those things. I think I was nodding my head because he compared AI to Excel, and I'm like, yes, that's exactly the right comparison to make, because it is. If you look at it as that, I think Laszlo Bock also had a good analogy. He said AI is like an intern, a high school intern working in the office. They'll do the work, but you've got to check it. You've got to check it, and they'll probably get it more wrong than right. So I think very, very clarifying perspective to bring.
If you listen to Sam Altman, he believes that that's become now a PhD intern, but the jury's out on that.
I think I agree. We're seeing a progression. So we'll start as a junior analyst and then like become a senior analyst, but you're going to have to check it all the time.
All right. Before the police come for you, because we're hearing the sirens, Roger, I've got a little bit of a fun game for both of you. This is going to require you to give some snappy answers. It's a variant on an old game, a bar game you may have played. It's called Keep, Kill, or Reframe. So I'm going to throw you some classic work concepts, and I want you guys to answer the first answer that comes to your mind. Don't worry about being polite to the other person. Just say it as it comes. Keep, kill, or reframe. You got me?
I'm with you.
All right. The first one, performance reviews.
Reframe.
Roger?
Yeah, that's definitely reframe.
Okay. Job descriptions, or JDs.
Kill.
Yeah, here I'd say reframe, because you're going to have to align again and again. So you're going to have to be very adaptable. It could change every 3 months. It's a little bit
So
like...
the answer is reframe, right?
Yeah, reframe. Yeah, that's a reframe. So it's going to change every 3 months.
Managers as coaches.
Keep.
Yeah, keep.
They're your clients, Roger. You got to keep them. To 5 work days.
That's gone. That's kill.
Yeah, I think that's kill. That was gone a long time ago.
Annual learning and development budget.
Reframe.
Yeah.
Feeling the pain right now. I think learning is going to be just in time. You have to deploy a budget. when it's needed, where it's needed, and you can't plan for those things in the current world.
Yeah.
Roger?
I was going to say kill.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, I got two more. AI-driven nudges.
Yeah, keep that.
And finally, human in the loop approval chains. I think I know the answer to this.
Keep.
Yeah, keep.
It's the
Awesome.
trolley problem. Would you let an AI choose which way the trolley would go? 5 people or 1 person? And who do you send to jail?
Very, very true. That's true. You don't have, as in banking, you don't have a throat to choke, as they say. Sunil, Roger, thank you both. This was sharp, grounded, full of real wisdom. I learned a ton, including a few buzzwords. To our listeners, the AI era isn't about doing less human work. It's more about doing more work, I guess. So stay curious, stay intentional, stay in the loop. And we'll see you here next time on A to Z.
Good stuff. Thanks, man.
Okay.
Thanks, Roger.